to share with us his point of view on the intersection of underdog and creativity. Carl. Hi, Carl.
Hello. Hello. How's everybody doing this morning? Well, I'm really happy to be here and talk to you all about the theme of underdog. Me being a former school teacher, of course, I had to look up the term underdog, and Merriam-Webster defines an underdog as a loser or predicted loser in a struggle or contest. And the second definition is a victim of injustice or persecution. This really got me to thinking about my work. I mean, there's all sorts of different types of underdogs, both real and fictional underdogs throughout time. One of the first things that came to my mind was a guy by the name of Charles Mingus, who wrote a book that was called Beneath the Underdog. Charles Mingus was an amazing jazz bassist and composer. He's probably my biggest musical influence. He's definitely close. But the thing about this book that really struck me is that, first of all, he wrote it himself, and it's very Faulkner-esque stream of consciousness, and it's an autobiography that he wrote in the third person. So if you want a trip, definitely check out Beneath the Underdog. And if you know anything about his story, it's both inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time. So he's one of my favorite underdogs. And then, of course, another one of my favorite underdogs is Underdog, the cartoon character. I grew up, I guess I'm dating myself. I used to watch Underdog back in the day. I haven't checked out the latest Underdog movie, but that was also an underdog that came to my mind. Today, obviously, I'm not going to be talking about Underdog, the cartoon character, but the underdog I'm going to talk about today are creative youth of color. So just to give you an idea, in Central Texas, young adults that don't have some type of post-secondary credential have less than a 12% chance of being able to make a living. And these are pre-COVID numbers. So the numbers are, I'm pretty certain, have gotten worse and not better. In addition to that, in Travis County, and these are also pre-COVID numbers, there are 11,000 young adults that are disconnected from employment and education opportunities. And youth unemployment nationwide for people of color, and again, these are pre-COVID numbers, is that for Latinx students, it's 1.5 times higher than their Anglo counterparts, and 2.5 times higher for Black youth as well. So they are my underdogs, and particularly creative youth of color. And I want you to think about this. If a young Black kid or Hispanic kid wants to become an engineer, everybody gets happy, right? And they're indulged. There's all sorts of opportunities for them to grow. People are throwing money at them. The organizations that provide STEM type of education, they're being well funded for the most part. But the creative youth of color are really naturally disenfranchised and disincentivized. And that's really a big issue, because creativity, the creative economy, is really what's driving our prosperity. And we're naturally marginalizing students, people that could really be a huge asset to us. And so that really brings me to the theory of change for E for Youth. And this really drives the philosophy. It belies everything that we do as an organization. And I'll read it to you. So we believe that creative youth, particularly those from underserved communities, are a drastically underutilized resource. And we work with our partners to invest cultural capital in these communities and deliver collective impact. Now, cultural capital is actually a term that was coined by a guy, a sociologist, a French sociologist, a while back, last name of Bourdieu. And it's really the sum of all your experiences and your relationships that make you more likely to be successful at something than somebody that has not had those types of experiences. And when you think about creative youth of color, first of all, if you think about the classrooms or our schools, 80% of the youth that are in schools are people of color, especially in Texas. 80% of our teachers are white women. Now, that doesn't make them unable to be able to reach our students, but there is a cultural divide. And this lack of being seen, a lack of being felt, feeling like you are being seen and being heard is really contributes to the disenfranchisement of youth of color. Whereas more fluid students, they get to indulge their creativity. They get private lessons. They may get to go to film camps. They may have aunts and uncles that are in different parts of the creative industry. And so they get to go and interact with them. And ultimately, they're more successful, not because they have more talent, it's because they have more access. And so our focus is, how do we start to build systems that are going to give these creative youth of color that type of access? So before I really talk specifically about how exactly we do that, I'm going to talk about the 4 E's. I wanted to give you a little bit more about my background. So I'm actually a second generation college graduate. My dad had a PhD in psychology. He was a psychologist and a colonel in the Army. My mother had a master's degree. She used to be an accountant and a business owner. And I was always expected to go to college. And as a matter of fact, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Music from UT Austin. But I didn't know that you could be creative and make a living and be anything other than a musician until I really got into midway or 10 years plus into my career. And that has to do with there being so few people of color that are really participating in a substantive way in creative industries and technology for that matter. So my first job, even though I have a music degree, I actually taught science and history for 1 year. And then I ended up teaching middle school for 5 years in Southeast Austin, a neighborhood called Dove Springs. I guess, as far as Austin goes, that's the hood, right? But it was there that I started an after-school enrichment program that was arts and technology based. And I really started to get into technology. This was in the 90s. Yes, way back in the 90s. And that's when I really embraced technology, and I actually ended up becoming an e-learning developer. And I started working particularly in interactive design, both as a developer and a producer. And I was eventually I was able to leverage that, and I became a music and voiceover producer in the educational field. And it was really kind of my dream job. It was kind of like a Schoolhouse Rock type of thing where I was writing music, I had other people that were writing and producing music. I was doing voiceover and producing voiceover. I was a technical liaison for the company. I was good at it. The money was good. And then, of course, the bubble burst and we all got laid off. This is in the early 2000s. I know I'm dating myself again. But some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Some of you don't. But so we all got laid off, and I wanted to stay in that world. And that's when I said, hey, I could do production in advertising, right? And so I tried to make that lateral move into advertising. However, my portfolio wasn't advertising. My portfolio was education. My relationships weren't in advertising. weren't in advertising. They were in education. So it was really, really difficult for me to make that transition. And I started to think about the students that I work with that are first generation potential college students. They may be the first person in their family to attend college. So if I didn't know these things and I'm a second generation graduate, how would they know? And then if they did know, how would they actually go about really pursuing those aspirations? And so that is what brought me to what is now E for Youth and the 4 E's that we essentially take kids through. First of all, the 4 E's is that we engage, educate, employ, and empower creative youth, and particularly creative youth of color. First of all, many students can't tell you what they like or even what they're interested in. It's amazing that oftentimes when I ask them, I might be the first adult that's even asked them what it is that they like to do and what it is that they're good at. So that's a huge problem. So what we've done is we've developed curriculum and a process for where we meet them where we're at. We develop relationships with them and we engage them where they're at. We say, okay, these are the things that you like to do. And now we're going to educate you on how you can leverage the things that you like to do to build a quality digital portfolio. And we have a rubric that we look at their work. We're able to score their work. And then based on their portfolios, we actually employ them to work with our partners throughout industry to do real work for real clients. And our students have done work for Southwest Airlines, Lyft, Whataburger, Food Lion, John Deere. They've worked on interactive projects with senior product managers at IBM. And so we've developed a model where both high school and college students are able to really deliver value to our partners. You know, I use the metaphor sometimes is that sometimes people think of philanthropy as you load up a pallet full of toothbrushes and you just you drop it off on a parachute over a village, right? And then like, okay, I hope that works out for you. Well, that's not really the way that we really want to work with our partners. We want them to see the value that the students provide, that they actually do provide value and can help them achieve their bottom line and double bottom line results. And so that really brings us to our mission as an organization. And what we do is we use the arts, sciences, and technology to help youth find and pursue successful careers in the creative economy through hands-on training, active mentorship, and exposure to real-world opportunities. Now, I know that I'm talking to a creative audience, but I often get asked, people are a little bit miffed, like, what do I mean by the creative economy? And so this was a term that was actually coined by a guy by the name of John Hawkins, and he called it an economic good or service or experience resulting from creativity with the characteristics of being personal, novel, or meaningful. And I went ahead and added in there for which folks will pay. Because we can all be creative and we all are creative, but there's a difference between just being creative and then somebody paying you to be creative, right? And so that is a big part of what we do as an organization. And so how do we do that? We have Get Creative enrichment clubs that are embedded in local high schools, okay? And we've been doing this for over a decade. And we sit down with career and technical education teachers that are in high school. We help them identify what their goals are. And then we have a pool of creative mentors that we custom match them with a creative mentor that's essentially going to lead their enrichment club. And we train them to engage those students, help them build that portfolio. And then from there, that becomes their launching pad into our ecosystem. And this past year, we worked with over 100 students at 6 high schools all of them majority minority high schools throughout Austin, Manor, and Pflugerville. Now, what we really started to focus on is that we had been doing these clubs for several years, and we weren't getting the level or the quality of portfolios that we really wanted to get with our high school students. And so we started to really invest in our college age mentors, and we started a partnership with the University of Texas called the Creative Leadership Academy. And essentially what we do is we have a pool of what we call digital apprentices, and we'll pay them $250 a semester essentially to get their shit together. Okay? So what that means is that we have them work side by side with professionals to learn what it takes to be a professional. And then we take the best of those students, and essentially what we've done is we've invented these employment pathways. So the first of those I talked about are our creative mentors that lead our high school enrichment clubs. And Brian mentioned about the Austin Digital Heritage Project, and that's our second career pathway or employment pathway for our students. Is they're what we call digital docents, and they're essentially collecting and curating the oral histories of people of color throughout this region. And I see that one of my board members and partners, Genaro Diaz of DJNR Interactive, is on the call. He is helping us develop EVA, the E4 Virtual Archive, that will house these oral histories, and our digital docents are curating these oral histories. They're going out to seniors, helping capture their oral histories, and they're also working with younger students throughout the community, doing our VR Remix Party workshops. We're also providing training and support for sister organizations like Latinitas and Creative Action. And so we're actually going to have this intergenerational community of practice around storytelling around Austin that will, in the next 2 years, will extend to 10 to 15,000 people of all ages, okay, from 8 to 80 plus. And then, of course, our third pathway is the internships and employment that our students have working directly with our partners, as well as working with our sister organizations. Part of the issue is that, for instance, an organization like Creative Action, they hire 150 people every year just to run their enrichment clubs. And what we're trying to do is make sure that there's a pool of creative youth of color that look like the students, the majority of the students that are being served. It's a way for them to bridge the gap in terms of employment. And we really want to build capacity all the way along the pipeline so that an 8-year-old sees that they have a pathway into the creative economy. And so that's really the gist, the 50,000 foot view, if you will, of how we approach this ecosystem building that we do and the overall pipeline. So I want to talk about some success stories that we've had. As by design, we are now, our more senior members of the Creative Leadership Academy are starting to be snapped up by companies. This is a young man named Bryson Williams. I met Bryson in the hallway at LBJ High School several years ago. He just liked to draw. In that time, he's graduated from Texas State. He's had 5 different internships at local agencies and startups. He went to portfolio school, and now he just got a full-time job as the lead creative for the Permanent Legacy Foundation. So that's Bryson. Another one of our success stories is Andrea. And Andrea's right now, she's an interaction design intern at Nokia, and she actually worked with Bryson in our internship program last year with the Permanent Legacy Foundation. And she's also worked at Johnson & Johnson doing UX and UI design. And so she's one of our success stories. And then we have another one, this guy right here, Christopher Robinson. I love Christopher's name. Christopher Robinson he had a marketing degree, but he was in the culinary arts. He was a line cook, and he was in his late 20s. Okay, and he started working as a creative mentor with us. He gained more confidence, developed his presentation skills, and now he works at Tableau. He just got promoted, and he's an associate solutions engineer at Tableau Software. And lastly, Savannah Garza, and I think Savannah even may be on this call. Savannah is one of our former creative mentors. Actually, there's one after Savannah. And she is now a designer for the Marina Arts District in Corpus Christi. And she has an amazing story. And actually, if you can go to our website in the next month or so, and you'll start to see virtual talks by some of these very people. And lastly, we have James Granberry. And James has a journalism degree. He worked in finance and hated it. And then he eventually started working as a creative mentor for him. I started talking to him about being a copywriter. He didn't know what a copywriter is. Well, now he's a junior copywriter at McGarrett Jesse and really thriving. And he's still working part-time as a creative mentor for us. So what does all this mean? I know I'm running a little bit short on time, is that the call to action here is we want you to really get involved in supporting our mission. We've been able to grow in the last year our digital apprentices from a core group of 15. Now we have close to 50. In the coming year, we're going to have 200. And by 2022, and we are looking at taking this program nationally, we're going to have 400. And you can also see the numbers in terms of the Austin Digital Heritage Project. So the ways that you can get involved is you can volunteer, you can donate. I always say you can't eat a warm and fuzzy feeling, right? And you can partner with us. And if you want to be a partner with us and be engaged with us, you can go to the website, and there's a link there on ways that you can partner with us. So I know that we're coming to the end of the presentation, and I wanted to leave you with a short song. I've had this grand piano here in my house for a few years, and I don't really play out that much anymore. But this song by Stevie Wonder, it's on the record Inner Visions. It's called Visions. Really spoke to me, and I'm going to perform a brief snippet of that, and just listen to the words, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A.
People hand in hand, have I made it to the milk and honey land, where hate's a dream and love forever reigns? Was this a vision in my mind? I'm not one who makes believe. I know that leaves are green. They only turn to brown when autumn comes around. I know just what I say. Today's not yesterday, and all things have an ending. But what I'd like to know is, could a place like this exist so beautiful? Or do we have to find our wings and fly away to a vision in our minds.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Enjoyed that.
It was hard to break the silence on that. I wanted that note to last a little bit longer, a little bit longer. I also didn't want people to think that you froze and we got stuck or anything like that. So,
Right.
Thank you for what a great mix of thank you for sharing your personal talent. First of all, thank you for sharing your music. Everyone keeps commenting, and we got a double today. We got 2 musicians for the price of 1, and I'm assuming you weren't watching the chat, but there's a lot of activity. People were really connecting with the E4 mission, the work that you're doing. I know immediately people, you mentioned at the end, people were connecting and wanting to understand how they could get involved. Can you go a little deeper before we get into the Q&A with everyone? If I want to volunteer right now, do I email you?
So you can go to our website right now. You go under the community tab, there's a volunteer page. And so you can fill out that form, and that gets you in our database. We have regular virtual talks that we do with different types of creative and technology professionals, so you can participate in those. As well as there are a number of ways that people can get involved as a volunteer. They can also go to the website. The first link on the left-hand side of the page is Partner with E4 Youth, and there's a breakdown. Because of just the current climate that we're in, we've had a lot of new demand, and so we're expanding our partnership opportunities. I'm like 94% of the way finishing that package, but there is a great one sheet that kind of gives you an overview. But we get I have another packet that's much more granular that talks about how specifically you as a company can get involved as well.
Awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. For those of us who do work at great companies that want to get involved, don't think about it only on an individual level. Think about it from a larger organization level. If you can get 100 of your coworkers involved, it's so much more meaningful than just you alone. So do both. Think about it both ways. All right, so we're going to throw it into Q&A. I'm looking over here at the chat, and I've got one question coming in from Polly.
Hey, Carl. Thank you for sharing more about E4 Youth this morning. I just wondered kind of how y'all have been affected by the COVID-19 situation, and just a little more of how y'all are working and adapting in that way right now.
Sure. It was definitely a big setback, as it was for everybody. We're working with high schools in these enrichment clubs, and so school kind of shut down for a while, right around spring break. And it was difficult because the students weren't even necessarily going back to their high school classes virtually, right? And so part of our advantage is that our creative mentors are just a few years removed from the high school students. And so they would text, they would call them. You know, really the secret sauce for us is the relationships, the idea of feeling seen. And so we focused on that. We were set up to have an amazing year, in that even though we purposely were serving fewer students this past school year, over 90% of those students actually created portfolios, and that was by January. So we're really starting to look at, okay, what's going to be the overall, how many of those are going to be actually quality portfolios? And so we didn't get the numbers that we wanted to have, but in comparison, we had 200 kids in the program previously, 80 of those submitted for our portfolio. They submitted 80 pieces. Well, we had 100 students this year, and we still had 80 submissions for our portfolio contest. So it has not been easy. We had to change our summer program where it's all virtual because they usually do physical internships where they're going into companies and working with us. It's been difficult. At the same time, it's also opened up new opportunities for us as well. I hope that answered your question.
Look at that. Matt has a question. Let's spotlight him.
Hi, Matt. Hey, Carl. Hey, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I really do appreciate your message. I was writing down questions as you were going along. You answered most of them about expanding the whole journey for everybody going into like the younger generation, especially considering that technology is such a big thing for them and they've come such a long way, getting started a lot earlier and finding their creativity and building upon that to get that journey going. I guess what I really was curious about, you started off, with music and then you kind of got into education and then you switched into advertising. You kind of had this whole thing. And me personally, I really find it to be really much more appealing as a creative to share my experiences with others. So I kind of love coaching and I love mentorship. I love doing that for others and helping them grow and seeing them succeed. Mm-hmm. So I kind of share that passion with you, but I'm curious as to whenever you got this program started, was this something that you kind of felt like you needed to do on your own, or did you kind of have a good community around you that were also mentors and kind of coach mentality? What was kind of your take on how to get this program going and kicked off from the start?
That's a multi-layered question or answer. I did have some mentors that were there to help me through this. But in a lot of ways, I was pretty much alone. When I started what is now E4 Youth, I was on unemployment. I was turning 40. I moved home with my folks, which are an hour north of Austin. And I was couch surfing. So, the struggle is real. I did have mentors, but it took a while. And also, I think it's difficult because you know what you need to do to get started, but if you're going to continue to grow, you have to continue to acquire new skills and build relationships. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching. I also had to really define what it was I was trying to do, because for a good long time I was trying to be everything to everybody. I was chasing money instead of chasing my mission. And I guess that's part of the fear. But I definitely had some mentors. A guy I went to high school with, Dennis Kennedy. He founded what is now the National Diversity Council. He was a key person that really helped me get started. Brian Jesse and Mark Magera of Magera Jesse, the advertising agency. They really helped me immensely. I've got folks at GSTM. Scott McAfee, who I saw was on the call. He is one of my mentors. So, you can't do great things alone, or at least that's been my experience, right? But I really had to actively cultivate, and also I had to be vulnerable. I mean, there was a point at which I was, I didn't have any hot water. I was sleeping on an air mattress, and frankly, I had to reach out to folks and say, look, if I don't get help, right, this is gonna stop. And so that's humbling, but your vulnerability can be your superpower. People are afraid to ask for help. People are afraid to feel shame. And at a certain point, you want to do something badly enough that you don't care how you look getting it done. And that's more or less where I got to. And frankly, I'm glad I did it. So, yeah. But yes, I did have mentors. I probably have more mentors now than I ever did. And that's really a big thing that drives me is how do I create an ecosystem where students can find those types of folks much earlier, and a multiplicity of those types of folks. And so, yeah, that's a big part of what drives me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for showcasing your superpower in that answer. That was pretty awesome. I see one more that I think will be a very good one to end on here. This one is coming from Jen, who can't join because of AV issues, so no problems there. Jen, I'll read it for you. She says, Carl, working on creative projects and working with students is often a learning experience in and of itself. What is something that your E4 participants have taught you?
Wow. They teach me stuff every day. I think as creatives, we fall in love with our ideas, and we have to be willing to step back and listen, because that idea that we love may not actually be the one that's really hitting the mark, right? And so I think the biggest thing that they had me, for instance, I give the example, I'm a musician. And so for a while when I was first starting what became E for Youth, I was still trying to do all this audio production work and I'll have some music for this, but ain't nobody got time for that, and so you have to be willing to take their honest feedback. I went through a 6-month boot camp a few years ago with BBVA Momentum, and there's a professor, John Doggett at UT. He talked about ugly baby glasses. Nobody's going to tell you that your baby is ugly, right? And so you've got to, and that's your business. Your business can be ugly, and nobody's really going to tell you it's not working. But if you can shut up and listen, the youth, they will tell you, right? And so you've got to be willing to listen to that and really take your ego out of it and really go with the thing that is delivering the most value and not the biggest boost to your ego. That's probably the biggest thing that I learned. Yeah.
So do you get a lot of honest feedback from your participants, it sounds like?
I try to, a lot of times I try to recede into the background and kind of be a fly on the wall. They're working with their creative mentors, so I'll come and sit in. It's interesting now because these things are going on virtually. I can kind of hover in the background and just kind of hear what it is that they have to say. Because you always think you have your mission, right? But when you say, okay, I just explain what I do to you, and then you say, okay, now I'm going to shut up, and you're going to tell me back what you think I do, and you got to be you got to be willing to say, damn, am I really communicating what it is that I say that I'm doing? So I think I've gotten better at that, and I think now I gravitate towards that. I want people to rip it apart, because that's just gonna, I can fail faster and I can get to a better, more optimal solution faster if I'm willing to listen to them rip it apart. But I wasn't always that way. I'm sure I threw some tantrums, a few tantrums going through that process.
As someone who worked in the advertising industry, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. I've never seen such a thing.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, I want to just say thank you from all of us, not only on the organizing team, but who were able to be here today, for your time. And beyond that, your work. This work is so important for the Austin community, for the youth that you serve, and all of us that are willing to have our work torn apart and made better because of the work that you're doing. So thank you so much. I hope everyone hears that this is not just a presentation to be passive with, that this involves a call to action, that if it touched you in any way or spoke to you in some way, that there is something to do, that you go to E4 Youth and you see how you might be able to be a catalyst to get your company involved, a catalyst to be involved yourself, or to use that as inspiration for some other way that you're going to help to better the systems that enable all of our youth in Austin to live their creative journey that they deserve. So thank you, Carl.
No, I really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure also to see D Madness. I used to play in a band with a few bands with D Madness back in the day. So that was a really great surprise. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and my perspective on the Underdog. So thanks.
Well, when we're in person, we give hugs and high fives. I'll give you a virtual high five after that. And appreciate you and appreciate y'all. We've got a link pack going out via email, but you can always give us feedback on Creative Mornings events. But to all the volunteer organizers who helped make this happen, I thank you. Our team is amazing, and thank you for keeping up in this pandemic time so we can continue to inspire each other and bring great voices like Carl's to this community. We hope everybody has a fantastic Friday. We'll see you next month, which is tomorrow. Just realize that tomorrow is next month. We'll see you next month with another Creative Mornings event. Until then, stay weird and all that kind of good stuff. We love y'all.
For joining us. Have a creative morning.